Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this European Union press conference. Alongside me is European Commissioner for Climate Action, Mr. Wopke Hoekstra, and Spanish Deputy Prime Minister representing the Spanish Presidency of the Council of the European Union, Ms. Teresa Ribera. I'll give the floor first to Commissioner Hoekstra for some opening remarks, then to Minister Ribera, and then we'll take some of your questions. Commissioner, please.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to all of you. I'm really happy to be here with all of you at COP28, because this feels like the moment we've been waiting for and working towards. Ever since the Paris Agreement, we have had a goal in mind, a temperature limit that we must not pass for the sake of our lives and those of future generations. Our work this year is off to a good start. The agreement on the loss and damage fund, the pledges, now a total of more than $500 million, and of course the swift adoption of the agenda, basically all set a positive tone as we close the first week. But make no mistake, there is still a lot of work ahead of us in the days to come. COP28 is the moment to take stock of the Paris Agreement. And the science is crystal clear. I've repeatedly said it, and I'm going to repeat it here. We have no alternative than to follow what scientists tell us. And they're telling us we're simply not on track. They're telling us that we need to accelerate our emission reductions, and we need to do it this decade. Ladies and gentlemen, the European Union is here to negotiate an outcome to the global stocktake that sets a higher bar. We know what is needed, and we know that we need to move faster. The world must peak emissions by 2025 at the latest and achieve 43% emission reductions by 2030. And we must also look to 2035, look further ahead and prepare the ground for the next round of NDCs. The crux of the matter, the thing we are of course all talking about, is the phase out of fossil fuels. So let me again be clear where I stand, where the European Union stands. I want this COP to mark the beginning of the end for fossil fuels. This is a key part for the EU and of our negotiating mandate, meaning that all 27 European member states want this to be part of the negotiated outcome. And I will be negotiating together with Teresa on their behalf to secure this outcome. We simply have to get rid of fossil fuels in full. Ladies and gentlemen, the EU has already set the tone. We got the support of more than 120 countries for the global renewables and energy efficiency pledge initiated by the European Commission President. And it says that by 2030, we will triple renewable capacity and double energy efficiency globally, as part of our efforts to phase out fossil fuels from energy generation. But we have over 190 parties here at COP28, and we need all of these parties to agree to phase out fossil fuels. Ladies and gentlemen, Teresa and I and our teams will be giving it our all, because we know that the science is clear, and because we already see what is happening with only 1.2 degrees temperature rise, basically in every single corner of the globe. Last year, we measured that 2022 was the warmest year on record. We're now in 2023, and we have the exact same statistic. Now 2023 is the warmest year on record. And everyone across the world has first-hand experience, unfortunately, with the effects of climate change. So that means that the transition has to happen now, and has to happen faster. The global stocktake must recognize the science and plot a path forward that is in line with a 1.5 degree future. So that is our task, and I'm very much looking forward to getting the work done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you so much. It is a great pleasure being here with you all. We are at your disposal together with the Commissioner to ensure that the European Union facilitates what the President said he wanted to achieve in this very precise moment. A historic turning point in this very critical decade. That's very precisely what we need. A historic turning point in this very critical decade. And as the Commissioner was saying, this means many things. But according to our own reading, this means that we ensure that we can stay within the 1.5 degrees pathway. So, sharp decline in emissions, committed action on resilience, and generation of generalized sustainable investments all over the world. It's been a great kick-off, that's for sure. Our duty in the coming week is to capture the mitigation ambition we need in the decisions, how we can build the adequate perspectives to adapt to the needs that are connected to the climate change impact that we are already living, starting to provide early warning systems to all, setting the basis for the broader understanding of what climate finance means. Clear language both on phase-out fossil fuels, as the Commissioner was underlying, and the new energy solutions and access to energy for all could be critical in this COP. Sending the right signals on abatement technologies to the only hard-to-abate sectors in order not to waste money and time could also be very important. But we must deliver also in adaptation. Access to fresh water, food security, the adequate response to health challenges, preservation of biodiversity in a 1.5 scenario are also critical points for this COP. And the multilateral level should deliver on this. Our ambition is pretty clear: how to ensure human resilience, in particular to the children and youth in a world with a changing climate. It is also worth it to think about what climate finance means, as I was saying. The 100 billion commitment was a starting point, but Paris said much more about this issue. We will not achieve 1.5 degrees unless all financial flows are climate-proof. Making this possible will need much work beyond this platform, but it is time to start this conversation. We need to invest in resilient architecture. We need to invest in resilience infrastructures. We need to decarbonize the industrial and energy systems. Huge amounts of money that could only be possible if we shift away from what we have traditionally understood as climate finance to enter in a much more broader understanding. The European Union will keep on providing financial assistance to the most vulnerable countries, but we need to enlarge the base of contributors and change the logics being applied up to now. Other relevant principles may be important in this discussion. The fair approach relates to historic responsibilities, but it also relates to financial capacities of today, or the polluter pays principle. We will work hard together to ensure that we find a sound and forward-looking outcome. This is our commitment, and this is what we will try to do from now onwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So we'll now take some questions. I see a hand raised first of all here. If you could identify yourself as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate Abnett from Reuters. Some countries at COP have raised the issue of unilateral trade measures and criticised countries moving ahead with carbon border taxes. So I wondered, is there a risk that the EU's climate and trade policy is causing tensions that could actually obstruct progress here in the climate talks? Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'll take another question here in the front from the gentleman. I'll go in rounds of two.
Yes, Benjamin Legendre for AFP Newswire. There is no new iteration of the draft text on the global stocktake this morning as expected, because many countries are against the whole 35 paragraph on the energy package. Could you comment on that, and what do you expect from the presidency to do today to unlock this point? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, so maybe first on the on carbon markets. I hope not, and I expect not that that this will be a major issue. And the reason is simply because if you look at the ETS and you look at CBAM, you immediately find out that this is nothing more than creating a level playing field and making sure that we do more in terms of climate action. And also if you look at the numbers, which will be very, very small for the world at large, and certainly if you break down for at a country or at a company level, it will have very limited impact. As a matter of fact, I think there is a tremendous opportunity here, and the tremendous opportunity is to do much more jointly in terms of carbon markets. It is, interesting enough, an idea I talked a lot about during the conversations I had in Latin America, in Africa, and in Asia. It is a time, we're living in a time for, this is, well, let me rephrase. It's an idea for which the time has come. And we should do more to make sure that we help out others as well to embark on this journey. Do you want to do the second one?
Yes. Okay.
Please.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for the questions. I think it is important, and it is also important to remind us that all assessments say that it would be very difficult to have a speedy decarbonization process unless there is a price on carbon. And of course, there is not a question on making things difficult, but facilitating and incentivizing that we all go along this pathway. This is what we intend from the European Union, that each counterpart does also play, according to their own understanding, this relevant role on carbon pricing. But the second question was also very important. What do we expect from the President today, and I would say during the whole week, and what is expected in terms of the organization of the work today? I guess that today there could be the message of the President of the COP wrapping up what it has happened up to now in the technical part of the COP, and providing guidance on how he intends to proceed in the ministerial track, in the political track of the COP. And what we expect from the COP President is not only to be an honest broker, we expect leadership. So to make sure that this idea of making out of this COP a real turning point in this critical decade takes place. And certainly there may be different views on the different articles and the different pieces of the circulated draft, which is normal, but I think that it is clear what people expect from this COP. We had a great momentum last year dealing with loss and damage, and there is no reason why not to take a step forward in terms of how to ensure that emissions coming from energy to become history, and the fossil fuels phased out has a path ahead of us that is clearly understood and managed in the time to come.
Thank you very much. I'll take one question here in the front, and then I'll go to the third row, gentleman in the dark shirt. Sorry, just wait a second for the microphone, and if you can introduce yourself.
Thank you. Good morning. This is Nuria Tesón from Spanish media La Sexta. I would appreciate if the Vice President Teresa Rivera could answer this in Spanish. We would love to know if you've been talking about the opportunity or the relevance of maintaining taxes on the benefits of energetic companies. We would like to know if these benefits are still happening or not, and if it will be relevant to compromise or to get a compromise with these companies in order to guarantee the energetic transition, and if you have reached or discussed this with your partners in the Spanish government. Thank you.
Muchas gracias por la pregunta. Contestaré en español. Esta es una conferencia de prensa de la Unión Europea y de la negociación, así que no tengo ningún problema en contestar estas preguntas fuera. Muchas gracias.
Gracias. There's a gentleman here in the second row. If we could get the mic. Sorry, third row. with the dark shirt.
Klaus Schanning from Danish Broadcasting. The Danish government today proposed a 90% cut in CO2 emissions, at least by 2040 for the EU. What is your reaction to that proposal, and where do you suggest that the EU should target?
Thank you. And I'll take a second one, maybe in this round. Gentleman in the green shirt here on the aisle, please. Okay, I'll give it to the lady. I'll come to the gentleman afterwards. We still have a bit of time. Thank you for passing it on.
Hi, thanks. And this is Sibi from the AP. I'm curious to know what your position is on the new quantified goal for climate finance. One major issue has been that a lot of global south countries say the $100 billion goal is, kind of been sidetracked. So what is the EU thinking about when setting this new major goal? And also with regards to carbon taxes again, I know, sir, you said it might even be positive, but there is talk about many global south countries going to the WTO regarding this. So could you maybe address that question one more time about how these concerns about it being restrictive, preventing, say, industry in emerging economies working properly? Could you please elaborate on how that won't happen? Thanks so much. And sorry, and finally, any comment on next week as you finish the COP? What do you want to go home with?
I'm impressed by how you managed to squeeze in 4 questions in one. Let me answer a couple of them, and then maybe Teresa, if I may ask you to fill in as well. Maybe first on the WTO and again on CBAM. Just to be crystal clear, we're absolutely confident that this is also been seen by the WTO what it really is, which is an instrument that does nothing more, nothing less than creating a level playing field and helps the environment and the climate at the same time. But I will give you the number. Our assessment is that by 2030, so a number of years out, the total value of CBAM will be roughly 3 billion. And you have to break that down amongst all companies that would then be importing to the European Union, but only to the extent they have not taken carbon reductions into account like European companies are doing. And that is precisely what is the why behind this tool. European companies are already living under this regulation, so it doesn't do anything more than creating a level playing field for them as well as for others. No one gets a better position, no one gets a worse position. Then maybe on the 90% and the Danish government, and then Teresa, if I may ask you for the financial side of things, unless you would want me to do it. I saw it, and of course, I can only applaud that ambition. For the European Union at large, we might have a conversation about this already at the next Council in December, but in any case, the Commission will come up with a communication by end of January. And what I've indicated in my hearing earlier on is that I will propose to the College to move to 90% as well. But of course, we will need to look into the specific conditions and the prerequisites. And that is the work that is currently on the way. But again, that will then be a communication that we will share with the European Parliament. And it will then be up to the next Commission to, in the end, really decide how to continue with this.
Yes, just an additional comment on the quantum and the financial expectations. We are here to set the basis of this conversation for the time to come. And as I said, 100 billion is important. It is very important. And public finance, public assistance is important, very important. And the European Union has been, remains, and will be committed on that, particularly towards the most vulnerable. In fact, out of the 410 million being pledged for the loss and damage fund, which is incredibly in place in less than a year, 60% of that amount, 67% of that amount comes from European member states and the Commission. Same for the general reference on the 100 billion. Last year, more than 28 billion came from the European Union. And this is good and will still be the case. But can you figure out how many billions were wasted in new investments since the Paris Agreement was adopted in 2015? A lot. It is impossible to ensure the 1.5 goal if we do not change dramatically the way we assess worth, value, and cost and harm. This is why we think that this is not just a discussion on a figure, but a discussion on how we can capture the willingness of most private companies, the willingness of all development banks, and the willingness of all governments to do the right thing, to reduce the impact of climate change, the cost of this harm, and at the same time to build all what we need in this very critical decade. We have 3, 5, 7 years, no more. This is why we think that it is worth it to discuss some figures, but it is much more important to change the terms of this discussion on climate finance to ensure that we do the right things in a fair manner, but the right things. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I had a hand raised in front of me, but yes, in the second row. Sorry, you're right, and then the lady in the third row. You were too polite.
Umi Goswami from the Economic Times. My question is to both the Commissioner and to Ms. Rivera. You speak about the tripling of renewables and doubling of energy efficiency and obviously phasing out of fossil fuel. I'm wondering what the European Union proposes to put forward, or what kind of a proposal it supports for a more robust financial mechanism that makes it possible for countries to actually deliver, those who are pledged to deliver and those who haven't pledged to actually step up and pledge.
Thank you. If you could just pass the mic to the lady behind you, and we'll take her question as well.
Thank you. Siento por el resfrío. Vanya Wokely from the Malta Business Weekly. I assume that at least informally there have been discussions about how to carry forward the reform of the current financial practices of the multilateral development banks. So is there an official EU opinion on this? And how do you foresee the various financial aid mechanisms of the community, such as Euroclima Plus, having to reform in order to help countries to phase out fossil fuels? Gracias.
Yeah, so maybe starting with that first one, as Teresa has just eloquently said, it is crystal clear that the European Union is taking leadership, not only doing stuff in its home market. We're doing now 7% of global emissions. The other 93% are taking place outside of the European Union. But we're also doing more than our fair share, and I think, by the way, that is absolutely justified, in helping out financially. We've done that by stepping up in not only pledging to loss and damage, but also making sure it was delivered already before the COP, but also in doing more than our fair share in terms of the 100 billion, with indeed 28, I think the dollar number is 30. So we're putting our money where our mouth is. At the same time, I think there's even more room for cooperation in terms of companies, particularly in hydrogen and in renewable energy. But that is not for here and for now. I think our commitment is crystal clear.
Thank you. Thank you for the two questions. Quick comment. The first of them, yes, we need to build robust financial mechanisms to facilitate a much more interest in pledging. And we could even think on how the oil and gas companies feel that they have a share to share in the most vulnerable countries, so to facilitate a robust, sustainable development in these countries. We would need to align many different issues. We would need to work for a while with different countries also, depending on the relative income in each country or the capacity to contribute according to the polluter pays principle. There are many things that we could be discussing in a friendly manner, so to ensure that we enlarge the base while we transform in a systematic manner the way of understanding, as I said, value and expense, waste, cost. On the second issue, it's true that we need to restructure the financial system, but in fact this is not the place. This is the place where we can send very relevant signals. This is the place where many economic players, both public and private, investors, financial institutions, have a look. So to learn, to have orientation on how they could change the way they identify their own strategies. And it is important that the messages are clear. Then, elsewhere, the decisions, the official decisions will need to be taken. But we cannot miss the opportunity to say what it could be important to say, not to waste any additional cent in what it harms the humankind.
Thank you. Gentleman in the middle has a mic, and then I'm going to go to the lady at the end of the front row, and that will be all we have time.
Sorry. I'm Rasmus Svaneborg from the Danish news agency Ritzau. There's a lot of worry that the term abated in the sentences regarding fossil fuels can be a gateway to have non-trustworthy climate credits and that kind of things. What's your stand on the word abated in the fossil sentences, and are you sharing that concern?
Thank you. And then if we could have the microphone at the end of the front row. This will not be the last European Union press briefing this week, so don't worry. We'll share them out later.
I'm Ivy. I'm with S&P Global. So my question is also related to CBAM. So like 2 days ago, I was at China Pavilion, and I saw a Chinese government official give very fierce criticism of CBAM in front of an EU official. I mean, as you mentioned, like CBAM is like WTO to decide whether it's reasonable, and also it's a more or less domestic policy. But what's your view of those polarized opinions about this system? How to engage all those export-oriented countries? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, again, I mean, on that last one, I would really invite everyone, including all of you, but also all companies and all countries that might be worried, to look into the specifics and the mechanics of the instrument and have the dialogue with the European Union. Because I haven't left a single room where we had this type of conversation where people were not actually relieved by understanding what it truly is. And again, it doesn't put anyone in a favorable or in a less favorable position. It simply makes sure that within the European Union, when things are being sold over there, that is always against the same conditions. And I think that is absolutely fair. And again, but that was the comment I made to the gentleman before, if you then look at the value, that is also something no one should be intimidated by. Then maybe secondly, sir, to your question, and let me be very explicit. We need to phase out all fossil fuels. It is that simple, and not because I say so or because Teresa says so, but because scientists tell us that that is the goal that we should live up to if we want to make sure we mitigate the boiling of our planet. Having said that, we do have to acknowledge that where we are now, in the here and now today, there are some sectors that are very hard to abate. That is the reality. But that does not mean that there where it is possible, companies or countries can get away with, CCSing themselves out of the problem. There is no magic solution. There is no alternative for phasing out fossil fuels as fast as we can and as broadly as we can.
Okay, if there's nothing to add, I'm afraid we're at the end of our time, so I'll draw it to a close there. Thank you.
Thank you for your enthusiasm.